So if, I'm gonna pin myself. So if you guys don't already know, my name is Kat. I'm the Executive Director of Water Rangers. And so today we're gonna go through a little bit about the background of Water Rangers, but we're gonna really focus on the test kit and a little bit about creating a plan. But then Najib is working on a little guide that she'll share with everybody as a sort of prototype for creating a plan, probably early next week or maybe Friday. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I will start by sharing. I'm just doing a quick little presentation. So as I mentioned, my name is Kat. This webinar and the launch of this program is a program with WWF, but obviously I really wanted this to be open to other people that had test kits as well, to make sure if they've been already testing or if they're just getting started testing with some of our partners, that they get the opportunity to hear the important bits. So I've been pretty good at keeping it, and I won't keep you past the hour point, I promise. So Water Rangers actually started because of my dad, and he tests at 2 small lakes in Val-des-Monts, which is just north of Ottawa. And he'd been doing the water testing for, since 2003. And the problem was he didn't really understand exactly what his results meant. And when I went out with him in 2014, I just returned from England. I'd been there for 9 years, and I returned and did the water testing with him. I said, what does it mean? He's like, I'm not sure. Is it good? Is it bad? How does it compare to other years? And then I found out that a lot of water testers are very passionate about water conservation, but don't have the sort of technical tools. And they oftentimes, are working in spreadsheets, spending a lot of time processing data, and you don't get that sort of moment of connection and understanding that you really need to connect and understand waterways, and also to share what you're doing. So at that point, his organization that he was working with was super overloaded, and he wouldn't get his results back properly for 5 months. So I'm actually a web and app designer, and I also design games, and that's my background. And I've been working in game design that helps people change, specifically in health and wellness. But my passion has always been the environment. So the first prototype of Water Rangers, it was this one. Just a second. I have. See my, I'll just leave it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so the paper prototype was, the idea is how can we get people to share data with the public in a format that they can understand? There's this idea of open data, but to me, data isn't really open if the average citizen can't access it in a format that they can understand. So we presented the first version of Water Rangers at the 2015 Aqua Hacking Summit for the Ottawa River, and we created a little prototype that let volunteers share their water quality samples, and then we integrated in some existing open data from the City of Ottawa in a format that they can understand. But as I finished this process, I realized, there's so many different ways that people are testing, and I'm not an expert yet. So luckily, I was able to go out with conservation authorities, other testing groups, to learn about their methods, things that they've been doing for many, many years here in Ontario and in Western Quebec. And learn about those processes and why they do things so that we could build a system that could be flexible, but also really support the average citizen participating. About 2 years ago, we launched our first test kit program, and it's been an amazing success, and it's been this sort of moment where people have really connected with it. So originally, our platform was just for existing groups to use and enter their data, but I had a lot of people coming up to me and saying, this is amazing, I want to participate. But then the organizations were saying, we don't have capacity to take on more volunteers. So I said, well, at least I can try and find out what equipment is good or bad. And so I started looking for a test kit out there that existed that I liked, that was easy to use, affordable, and accurate. And a lot of the ones that, you know, coming from a design background, I was really dissatisfied with what existed out there. So we started with a few components, and then we created, we applied for a grant, and we continue to do that for the ongoing years. And this is Dee Mcleod, and he's on Charlotte Lake in Ontario, and he was already a citizen scientist. He'd been collecting his temperature data since 1983. And there's a lot of people that have been doing things like ice off for a century. So citizen science isn't a new thing, but now Guy is using the kit alongside his conservation authority, which can't afford to test every year. So now he does monthly testing on his lake. But as you can see, you know, he's getting a trend here showing some warming, and this is corresponding really well with what we're hearing from scientists. So I really love that connection, and we're working with many more scientists to integrate what we do into their data sets so that it can be more useful and contribute to real science and decision making. So we're going to go through the kit here. This is the newest kit. Some of you may have our older kit. It still has the same components in it, but some of the stuff in the newest kit have a better user experience. As we're always sort of taking your feedback. So if there's something that really bugs you, it doesn't work well, please let me know. We do keep track of it, and things like the reel for the Secchi disc, which I'll talk about in a bit. A lot of people were having trouble reading it, and in the Toronto Harbor there was some concern that, you know, if they had a sewage overflow event and we were using a rope, how much of that E. coli might be stuck on the rope. So this is something we can wipe down. So there's lots of improvements like that we're making all the time. And we're also testing our kit against professional probes. We did a little mini study with Carleton University alongside some of the conservation authorities to see how well our kit compared on these 4 parameters. The temperature and the conductivity were excellent, like really, really great. We have a chemist we work with, and he absolutely loves our conductivity meter. The dissolved oxygen was very good. It's a scale from 1 to 12, and it was within 8%, which is pretty awesome. And we're hoping if we could take a photo, we can get even more precise, since, you know, right now we're just dealing with whole numbers. And then the pH was the least good, but it was still okay. And we're working on ways to improve that as well. So we work with a lot of kids and go on excursions, and so I encourage you to think about how you can teach others. You know, younger kids can do certain parts of the tests, and they really enjoy being part of it. If you are running an excursion, let me know, and I can share with you our teacher's guide, which gives you some tips on how to set up your event. So yeah, lots of events, lots of kids. And then as I mentioned, we always try and incorporate your feedback. This is Eden and her daughter, and they're testing on the East Coast. And they said, you know, it's really hard in some of our locations to reach the water. So you'll notice in your kit you have a selfie stick, but we call it a reacher stick. And this was a co-creation with Eden to help her reach the water. And now it's a part of all our kits because it's just so helpful. We're also working on a study with Carleton University to see how testing affects you doing other things. Our last programs had a really high correlation between doing more activities for water stewardship. And then this is something that you're going to have to be aware of, is that a lot of people will ask you what you're doing. And if you, oh, sorry, that's my dog. Phoebe? Phoebe. Sorry about that. Yeah, so just be aware that a lot of people are going to ask you what you're doing, and if you feel confident doing so, there's a field guide there that can help you talk through the various steps, but a lot of people become teachers, and we hope that we make it as easy as possible for you to do that. And then other people use their kits to go on holidays. A few people go and visit new water bodies. Every body of water has its own unique chemistry. So it is really fun, and I really enjoy taking just a few of the items with me, even when I go on dog walks. And yeah, so even little kids can work on it. The platform is map-based, and you'll be responsible for putting in your own observations. And each observation report has all these different parameters that you'll see. And I'm just going to end the presentation now because we're going to start going through it. And we've actually just done a redesign. So I want to make sure that that we focus on the newer version. So once we're finished testing, we'll go through that. Okay. So you will either have one of our old kits, which looks inside like this with your disc, and then the rest of the components are in a little case. Or you'll have a new case, which is a little bit bigger, but this is based on feedback from other years. The idea is everything is grabbable, and you can chuck things in, and I actually chuck my water bottle for drinking water on top so that I have space to do it. But it is really quite pleasant, the new bag for user experience. But the other bag has all the same things, just doesn't have it in the new format. So we'll get started. We'll look in the front pocket. The most important thing that you'll want to keep reference to is your field guide. Throughout it, in the new guide, there's a green bar at the top with links. And there's oftentimes video tutorials for the various parameters and more information. So for example, the conductivity has some an ask an expert area and a lot of different tips. So when you start, there's a quick start guide. It goes through the steps, and it gives you the page reference so that you can go. And it gives you a little diagram just so that you can familiarize yourself with all the items in the kit. That's a good one. And then we give you two options. So we give you a notepad and a cell phone case. So we have an app. We're just in the process of doing a release today. So if you wouldn't mind waiting until tomorrow with the new release, which I'm very excited about, it should be launched tomorrow. But you can enter things automatically into the app. And I recommend that because there's a transfer error, and if you're like, oh, I'm going to do it later. One of the things that happens is we check all the observations going in. So especially for your first observation, please enter it in as soon as possible so that we can catch any errors, so that you don't do your whole season and we have to throw out some of your data. So we can catch errors early, I think is really important. I personally prefer to use both. I oftentimes add all my photos on my phone. I actually really, I'm a little old school, even though I'm a web designer. I like writing things down. So this is a waterproof paper, but it is recyclable. And it has all the important things you need to know, the date and time, the body of water, and then the location name is actually optional. But if your body of water is Lake Ontario, please put a location name to be more specific. And on the website, when you create a new location, there's extra details that you'll need to add in, just describing the site. And we also want you to add photos so that if anyone else is testing in that spot or they want to view it in person, what you've written down, that you're really clear. The weather right now and the weather in the last 24 hours. Pollution events often are correlated with rain events, and especially in cities, that's when we get our sewage overflows. We get a lot of sediment that comes into our water bodies. So in the last 24 hours, very important. Air temperature, water temperature, conductivity, dissolved oxygen, and you have your test strips here. And then down here you have what we use your Secchi disc. So if you can see the bottom, then you do depth. If you can't see the bottom, you do something called the Secchi depth, which I'll show you in a second, but it's a measure of water clarity. And then there's some space on the back of every sheet for you to enter your notes. Then you have a little goodie bag. There's a few postcards in here that, you know, if people are asking you what you're doing, you can either give them one or you can use them to help you explain what you're doing. There's some badges and some stickers. I use these with kids especially. I ask them, we do some training, they do the tests, and then I ask them some skill testing questions, basically some of the stuff that we just covered, and then they become an official water ranger. So you don't get to be an official water ranger unless you actually do the test. That should be your rule. There is also my business card in there. You know, for our program for WWF, Najiba is the main contact. But if you are having trouble and you need some advice right away, you feel free to give me a call. We're also starting a new thing called Testkit Recycling. In your bag, you'll have a little container. So when you're in the field, you put your test strips in there. And then at the end of the season, you're going to mail them back to us for recycling. We asked the manufacturer, they're not recyclable in the regular recycle yet. So send them back to us so that we can take care of that. We also have a magnet that talks about this, the testing days, the official testing days for this year, which are Sundays at 10 a.m. with alternative days being Friday, Saturday, and you can also do it Monday if it's part of your work. We want people to be consistent, and it's on the last weekend of every month. There is also some guides for some of the equipment in your kit. These aren't necessary, but we do include them just in case you need to do some troubleshooting. And then the last thing is we're working on a study that is trying to read test strips. So we give you a reference card, and if you'd like to participate in this, all you need to do is when you do your test, read it as normal, and then also lay your strip down on here and take a photo and add it to your observation report, and that will help us with our study. So we're always doing new studies, as you'll find out. We want to be continually improving. So we really, if you're into that, please participate in these. They're really fun, and it's really cool to see what kind of results we get. But if you don't want to do it, that's okay too. All right, let's get into our kit. So in the new one, we have this cool area, and I think for the people that we sent out test kits, your cup may have fallen out, and before we were putting your cup in like this, and it sort of falls out, but I found out that if you put it in the other way, it stays in really nicely, so you want to flip that around. In here, you have some gloves and some Whirl-Pack bags. This is for two purposes. The first purpose is we're going to use one of the Whirl-Pack bags as our garbage bag for collecting the ampoules for dissolved oxygen. So you're going to put one of those aside. But the reason we include this is in case of emergencies. So sometimes there's a pollution event happening, and the officials, you're gonna call the officials, and you're never gonna put yourself in any harm's way. But sometimes the moment of pollution happens right then, and being able to take a sample that is sterile is really a good thing. I always say to people, videotape yourself taking the sample, and make sure that you don't contaminate your Whirl-Pack bag. So there's a little pull here, and we never touch the top of it. We pull on these little two tabs, and then we can scoop up in the water like this. Now, if it's especially toxic feeling, please wear your gloves. But if you are concerned for your health, please don't take a sample. Please get out of there as soon as possible. Safety is always, always, always first. All right, so that's what that's for. And the sample cup. Now, in your kit, you've got your selfie stick, and reacher stick, sorry. And on the new ones, we're putting these stickers, and what we're showing you how to do is how to clamp it and to remind you to rinse it 3 times. We always rinse our cup 3 times in the water that we're collecting. Now you can put it on the bottom like this, but if you are in any sort of fast moving water, that can sometimes fall off. So I suggest you put your cup like this. And then you can extend and you can reach the water. Okay, great, I think. So you rinse it in the water 3 times, just away from where you're planning on testing. If you are wading in, make sure that you sample upstream from where you're standing, because your feet are gonna disturb the sediment below. But what this means is you can be safer. You can do the test from shore. We always test at least an inch below the surface. The top inch is a different zone, so we want to make sure that we're testing at least an inch below the surface. So the first thing we want to do is, oh yeah, the first thing. So if people ask me, they're like, oh, how long does this take? Does it take a long time? I'm getting so fast, I can do the whole thing in 5 minutes. Now, I don't think you're going to be as fast as me, and we want you to be careful, but you can sort of plan it so that things are happening, and then you can bring things together. So don't do it in 5 minutes at the beginning, but you'll find that you will get faster. The first thing we do is we hang our thermometer in a tree or in a shady spot. We never hang it on our body, and we try and hang it at least 1 meter above the ground in the shade, and this is for air temperature. Now, so I hang that up first, and I wait at least 5 minutes before I do my reading. Then I take my sample cup, just for demo purposes. Obviously, it's not, there we go. See if I can tilt this a bit. Let's see my face. Okay. Now, you don't want to be putting your fingers in here, especially if you have sunscreen on. You're going to contaminate your sample. But the first thing I always do is my conductivity meter. So this is your conductivity meter. Conductivity measures anything that will conduct electricity in water. So think about metals, road salts, natural salts, even phosphates and nitrates also will spike your conductivity meter. And the cool thing about this is every body of water has its own unique levels and chemistry. So for example, the Ottawa River, its natural conductivity level is around 70 microsiemens. So if you look on your thing, it says US, that's microsiemens. But the Rideau River, which also flows into Ottawa, but from the south, has a natural reading of about 350. So Ottawa River 70, Rideau River 350 for conductivity. And I say to kids, well, is that good or bad? And they say, well, what does that mean? The Rideau River must be much more polluted than the Ottawa. Maybe, but actually in this case, the readings for the Rideau was in quite a pristine area. And the reason it's different is the Ottawa River is coming from the Shield, which is harder rocks, and the Rideau River is coming from the south, and it has a limestone bottom. And as we know, limestone dissolves much quicker than harder rocks. So we have more calcium and more magnesium in our water. It's actually a smaller water body as well. So less water is touching the side at any one time. So you'll actually see in urban streams, the water is touching the bottom a lot. So you're gonna see higher readings in urban streams, also because of pollution. But in streams generally, you see slightly higher readings for conductivity for those reasons. But once we determine what a baseline is for our body of water, especially for conductivity, we're going to find that we can start guessing and creating hypotheses, to see if we can sort of understand the relationships between conductivity, pH, alkalinity, and all these other parameters. Okay, so to do conductivity, we'll press the top button once. And it's going to cycle through its things. You can see it says about 5. If your reading's ever below 10, there's probably one of 2 problems. Either you didn't take your cap off, or you have it up in the air. So to take your cap off, you're going to pull. It was really sad last year. Someone didn't put their observations until the end of the year, and they'd had their cap on all summer. So this is another reason why it's really important to put your observations in right away. Okay. So this is drinking water, and you can see the top there. It says US, and it just stopped flashing. and then temperature. So we write down conductivity and temperature together. They have a relationship, so you really need to make sure that they're in there together. So the top reading says 122 and the bottom says 19.9. So 19.9 degrees Celsius and then 122 microsiemens. So what this tells me is my prediction is right. Our drinking water here comes from the Ottawa River. It's obviously been treated. And after a storm event, you're going to see a spike. It gets up over 150 here in, from the taps, which just shows that they're making sure that we're being safe, but they're treating the water. You'll notice that well water is much higher, much higher, but it's harder, right? You know, it has a taste to it. So all these things have a relationship. All right, so yeah, we always do this one right away when we take our sample because, oh, you just mute yourself. Just have some feedback. Oh, good. Yeah, because as soon as I take this out of the water temperature is gonna start to change. So once we're done with that, we can just press the top button to turn it off. If for some reason you start pressing buttons and it goes into a weird mode, what I always say to people is just open the top cap. Hopefully Jordan, one of our volunteers, did this. So if you had Jordan tighten your cap, it might be hard to do. But and then I just move the battery until it turns off. There you go. And then I can just turn it back on again. There is probably other ways to do it, but that is the simplest by far. If you're dealing in dirty water, make sure that you rinse your this little bottom area, at least in drinking water or something, just so that it lasts longer. All right. So we're gonna look at test strips. Now you might have one of two types of test strips. They're actually the same brand. They're created by the same manufacturer, but we're switching over to this container this year. So you might have these. And HTH is actually a brand that's made by Taylor. The cool thing about these is you can replace them yourself from Home Hardware or Walmart here in Canada, but you won't be reading the bottom and the top values, and it's a little bit harder to compare, which you'll see in a second. So if you have these ones, which I'm really excited about, take one out and you just shake it out. We always, with the test strips, we want to make sure we have dry hands, really important dry hands. If you get water in here, all the test strips will be ruined. In this case, we're going to do a dip, 1, 2 seconds, a little shake, and then we wait 20 seconds for them to develop. And I'll show you why in a second. So same brand, again, dry hands, close the cap right away. 1, 2, and these ones we read right away. And you'll see why. Check it out. Can you see how much thicker the pads are on the new ones? I like this because this one dries out really fast. So if you don't read it fast, it can dry out. So hardness 0. Oh yeah, and we hold it vertically. And then we compare the colors, always starting at the bottom with hardness, with the blues, and then working our way up. So our 20 seconds are up, so we can compare. I can show you in this one. You can see. And we just keep moving it for the various parameters to do our reading. If it's between the two values, we're going to take the absolute center of those two values. Don't be like, oh, it's a little bit closer to 7.2. And one of the reasons we're trying to do that machine learning study is so that we can use our phone to read these, which I think some people especially find the pH one hard to read and to interpret. So we want to try and make things as easy as possible for you. Now you may be asking me, like, Kat, why are we studying and writing down chlorine? As you can see, these are for pools. We chose these test strips. We compared over 15 different types of test strips, and these ones were by far the best user experience and accuracy for test strips. There's ones that were made for ponds and lakes, and I didn't like them at all. So they're accessible and accurate for pH. But also, we're finding people in urban streams are getting readings for chlorine. And we think it might be correlated with road salts, but we're not sure. So we're working with a few partners to see if that's true. But for this year, we're asking everyone to write them down so that if they are valuable, then we have your data for it. And if it's not, then, you know, we'll have to regroup on that one. But it's worth just spending an extra second to write those down. So all these values, you know, I could almost predict them based on the conductivity was super low. So the hardness is super low as well. There's not that many minerals in this water, very low. Alkalinity and hardness change together. So you'll always see a direct relationship with them. And the alkalinity here is low. It's between 0 and 40. So I'd write down 20. pH, it's a little bit high today, between 7.5 and 7.8. And then our chlorine is between 0.5 and 1, so I'd write down 0.75. All right. Then we have our dissolved oxygen, and I often start my my test with this one because there is a wait time on it, and this can help you go faster. So it comes in this case. Probes for dissolved oxygen are really, really pricey. They're thousands of dollars. And so we were very excited to find this kit has a really nice user experience compared to some of the other tests that we've tried, and has that accuracy. We had one of our partners that had a finicky dissolved oxygen meter, and she was using our kit as a second check to see if her device was calibrated correctly. So I was pretty excited about that, you know, that it's getting this sort of reputation for doing well. Inside, you're gonna see that you have your comparison chart, a little sample cup, your ampoules, and there's 30 of them in there, and your timer. So this is a 2-minute test. So what we do is first we get our little sample cup out, and you can see there's little ridges in the bottom here. Get an ampoule out. Now it's much more important to do this quickly than to get an exact 25 milliliters, because we're actually taking the water from the bottom anyways. And again, just like the sample cup, we want to take this at least an inch below the surface, and we want to do this right away. As soon as I take this out of the water, it's being exposed to the air and being oxygenated, so you're not going to get as precise of a reading. Now, if you try and do the test and you don't break it, just relax, just take a deep breath, just pour your water out and take another sample again. It's not a big deal. Don't, you know, if 10 seconds have passed or 15 seconds have passed since you took your sample, it's better to just try again. Obviously today we're not at the water. So, sorry, don't ever do that, but there was a fluff in my sample cup. Don't put your fingers in that was very bad behavior. Don't do that. Okay, so I took my sample really quickly, at least an inch below the surface, and then I'm gonna put my ampoule, and you can see there's like a little white line there at the top. I'm gonna put it in one of the ridges, the one closest to me, and you're gonna see how little effort it is. It's a pull towards me. It's not a push down, it's a pull. So we'll just watch this. That's it, very, very light. It's a vacuum sealed with a dyed liquid. So it pulls the water in, and we invert it 2 times, letting the bubble go up and down. This is mixing it. Now this dye is not toxic, but don't get it in your eyes and or mouth, just as a safety precaution. And also just remember you are dealing with glass here, so be aware that that's a bit of broken glass on the top. You don't want to do that. So I've just done my sample, and then I set my timer. When I do my comparison, I always say take your comparison chart out, and you'll see why in a second. To take it out, pull, and then to put it back in, there's like a little tiny nub here. And then you put your thing underneath the nub, and then I just press down. So it is a bit of a pull, but yeah, just you'll get faster at this. But I just find for comparing, you're going to find that it's much better. Let me see, my timer's going. There it is. The manufacturer doesn't include a timer, but when you're trying to record things on your phone, you're not going to have a chance to put your timer on your phone. You're going to be busy. While we're waiting, we'll do the Secchi disc. So this is a Secchi disc, S-E-C-C-H-I, Secchi, and it's been used for over 200 years to measure water clarity. So this is a citizen science tool that I think is pretty awesome. The old ropes. This is the more standard way that a lot of the conservation authorities use a rope that's marked half meter and meter. And you sort of estimate the distance based on the rope. And you know, one of the reasons why the rope is good is because we don't want to be super precise, and we don't want to be like to the millimeter, because it is a visual test and everyone's vision's a little bit different. You don't need to be super precise, but we're just implementing these reels this year for a few reasons, to keep it clean, but also for first-time users to be able to use it better. So what we do is we actually just lower it into the water until we can't see it anymore. And then we raise it and lower it till we can find that sort of perfect point where it disappears. We always make sure we have our sunglasses off, and you don't want to be necessarily in the shady part of your boat, but you don't want too much glare on the water either. And so we lower it till we can't, and then we actually grab the rope right at the water. Now, if you're doing this from a bridge or something, what you can do is you can pull it up and see where the wet point is as your mark of the water clarity. So imagine this was our water clarity depth. We measure in meters, so this would be 0.35 meters, so 35 centimeters, 0.35 meters. Every body of water has its own unique clarity as well. Some, 35 centimeters would be totally normal. Others, my lake is usually between 5 and 8 meters. Lake Superior, and there's some Northern Ontario lakes, are much, much more, and that's their normal level. Your rope here will only go for 20 meters. So you can use this for depth when you can see the bottom, but don't use it for depth on a really deep lake because it's not going to be long enough. Also, make sure you hold on to this. The Secchi disc is weighted. So if you lose this, then it's going to sink to the bottom. So yeah, so you want to make sure that that you do that. So you can either measure the depth when you can see the bottom, or you measure the Secchi depth if you can't, which is how far. It's basically a measure of how far the light can penetrate, which I think is really cool. And scientists are very interested in your readings for Secchi depth. Okay, so our timer is up. So I got my comparison chart out, and I always start from the bottom. And one of the things we say with Water Rangers is test with a friend, and especially for these color tests, you have to agree. And the reason is we want you to spend the time to really, really see. We don't want you to do this quickly. It can be really hard to read, especially if it's sunny. And if it's in between a value, you can put the in-between value, but you can see it's much easier if it's out. Now I'm gonna do my reading. You can see I've changed my angle. I can find it. And we're reading about 9, which makes sense. It's very high. Places like harbors, or where you have lots of algae or in a pond, you're going to get really low readings. And I think Elise from Swim Drink Fish got a reading of 1, or it was below 1. So when you have a lot of pollution in a harbor, you can get some pretty horrible readings. So this one's been pretty awesome. When you're finished, you have one of your Whirlpack bags that you're going to use as your garbage can. We're still talking to the manufacturer about how we could possibly recycle this. I don't have an answer yet. So for now, we still are just putting them in the garbage. But if you want to wait till we can find out, you can also just collect a whole bunch. And then at the end of the season, I should have an answer for you on where we can possibly recycle these. Trying to be conscious of our waste. All right, so that's the main kit components. I'm just going to show you how we put our data into the website. as a final thing. And then if you guys have any questions, we can do that. So much stuff on here. Oh, last thing with this, don't put this right in the water. The little tip is in there. So what we do is we pour the water out slowly, leaving the tip in there. And then I use my container and I tap it in. Sometimes it's a bit tricky. There we go. Awesome. And you can pack up your kit. Sandy has a question. She says, is the cup for the dissolved oxygen test reusable? Yes. Please keep your cup because it has those ridges. It's really tough to do this test without this cup. So again, we want to rinse this 3 times before we use it, and then a little bit away from where we do our test. Good question, Sandy. I think that's really important that we are clear about that. And same with your sample cup, it's reusable. The reason we use the Whirl packs when we collect a sample for the lab is it's sterile to make sure. So this is what the scientists have been teaching me. If you've heard otherwise, let me know, and we can tell everybody. We're always trying to improve. All right, now let's go to the website. So when you go to Water Rangers, you have our website, and obviously we have our observations, all about our water kits, and then there's lots of information. And we're going to be adding lots of videos where we'll ask experts your questions. So send us your questions and we'll get some experts to answer them. So we're going to visit the data platform because you guys have already seen the kits. And here you can watch a video. This is a redesign that we've just launched recently. So this video is going to be replaced in the next week. But it has the same functionality to teach you about the site. So you can sign up for an account if you already have an account. That's great. But as you can see, every person has their own account where I have observations, how many issues and locations, and then your association. So most of you will be associated with a group, which is great, and supporting one another and being able to check observations. So you'll be part of a group, and then that means your form will be created. If you're a part of another group and you'd like to create one, you can see, I think we have 93 groups now. You can scroll down to the bottom and you can add your group. So once you have to be a signed in user, and then you can sign up your group. Okay, let's add an observation quickly. Actually, I like going to my lake. So Val-des-Monts is just north of Ottawa. You can see there's lots of locations. So each of those points are a location. They're little clusters. And then once you get down there, you can see individual locations. So I'm just going to talk briefly about how the plan was made for our group. Basically, let's go to my group. So the bigger organization is there too. But see my group here, what we have is we have 4 official testing locations. And this is the deep point on the other lake, the joining lake, that's a deep point. This is the deep point on Lake McGlashan. This is the deep point in the other bay. So there's 2 basins in this lake. So we have 2 deep points. And then we have a sample point near the stream. So you want to think about, when you're looking at sample creation, what do you want to test and what's important to you? And one of the things that might be important to you is a point source pollution. So point source pollution could be where a stream comes in from another water body, where you think there's maybe a sewage overflow, where pollution might be happening, and that's how we choose our sample locations. You also want to always pick something called a reference site. A reference site is a site that you believe is not in any trouble. So it's a pristine location so that you can compare. So as you can see here, we have 4 locations for our group that we test monthly. And then when you go and you can see, what happens is over time we start graphing your data so that you can see, you start seeing the trends. You can see our Secchi depth's quite big, but yours might be smaller. And then you can add things like photos. So if we were going to add an observation to this location, we'd go add an observation, associate yourself with the correct group. If you only have one group, it'll automatically select it. And then you can change the date and time based on when you actually did it. So you were doing it before. And then you have your data here that you can enter in. And there's lots of different parameters that you can put in, and your group will be specifically created to enter that data. So, and then we have all these, what's this? What's this? Water temperature. And we try and give explanations that are built for grade 5 reading level or lower. So if you are part of a group, the group form will be created for you. But if you want to create your own group, I'll just show you quickly. There's lots of different tools for group owners in Manage Group, where you can do things like change your protocol based on, you can change your form and how the form is displayed. So if I don't want river flow anymore, I can drag it out. River stage. This is one of our partners in the States wanted river stage, and I was just testing it. I don't actually test for that. So you just want to show yourself the fields that you need to fill out, and then you can save it. All right. So we're almost done. So if you guys have any questions on how to do this, please put them in the comments now and we can go through them. But I just want to say, you know, if you zoom on the map, you know, we're growing really fast. As part of this program with WWF, we have people across the country, but we also have partners in Mobile Bay in Alabama, they're a big partner, and in Florida, the St. John River Keeper. And then we're also, it's very exciting, super excited about it. We're just finishing translating the site into Portuguese because some French researchers from France are taking our kits to the Amazon rainforest to help build capacity with some communities there. So that's pretty exciting. So yeah, so we're growing very fast and we're always working to try and improve things. So if you have any questions, as I mentioned, we really want to get experts to answer your questions. I like to have good questions to ask them. Oh wait, I'm just going to show you one more thing while we're here. Well, I have you. All right. On here, you're also going to see things like water test parameters, how to test, how to create a plan. The cool thing about this is that we can add videos in. So you can see the different studies that we've done with conductivity. And we're trying to create this format where we say, what is it? Why is it important? And what does it mean? Give you some common values that you might get in your region. And then you have expert videos, our protocol, and then there's me and my lake. Well, yeah, safety, always safety. So wear your life jacket, people. And then calibration. So our conductivity meters are excellent. They have come calibrated. If you've had your conductivity meter for more than a year, you're going to need to calibrate it. So please email me, kat@waterrangers.ca, and I'll send you some calibration solution. I think it's pretty easy. People have been enjoying calibrating it. But if you've just received it, we've calibrated it before we sent it. So you won't need to calibrate it until the spring, and we'll put on another webinar at that point to do that. All right. I think I talked really fast, but does anyone have any questions? So Najiba is working with the people who are part of the WWF program, and she's going to be sending out some information on how to create a plan in more detail. There is some stuff on the web, and then hopefully next week we're going to have another expert who's created a lot of protocols for Ontario to actually talk a little bit more in depth on creating a plan. Our official first day for testing is the 28th of June. What day is Sunday? Where's my magnet? I think it's the 28th of June. But if you've just received your kit, I really encourage you to go out and try it out before the official testing day, just to try it out and see if you have any questions, because they will emerge. Sandy asked, how much is the test kit? The big kit is $350, which people can buy from the store, store.waterrangers.ca. We are attempting to be a self-sustaining nonprofit. We apply for grants to try and share this, but I really want this to be a self-sustaining nonprofit. So all those sales help us reach more people and grow the movement. But we also have the mini kit for $120. And then in the spring, we always try and see if we can get grants or sponsors for resupplies. But we also, for people that have who need resupplies, we give them a discount code to help them continue testing. The other thing that we're trying to offer this year for people is, you know, if you want to participate and help us spread the word, we're doing a little profit sharing thing. So email me if you want to participate, but basically you give out a code, and then a small portion goes into a fund that can help you resupply your kit at no cost. And we really want to make it affordable and sustainable for the long term for organizations. All right. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to say it out loud, but or you can write it in the comments.
This is Sandy. Sorry, I thought it'd be easier if I just asked my question by voice than typing.
Sure.
So we have an area, as I said, in Georgian Bay where there's a lot of cottagers that are very interested in this type of thing. I think this is a fabulous kit. I'm so excited about it. They keep asking me, like, how do we get involved with water sampling and how do we help? And so this is really great. I guess some of my questions are related to, I think the cost is fine. You know, we can sort that out and figure that out. I guess the question I have is, you've got a schedule for this summer. If we're not organized enough to get started on June 28th this year, is it okay to start mid-summer and then just keep going? I'm assuming that the best results are continuous year-over-year results. How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so last year what we asked people to do is to create their own plan, either weekly or monthly. But this year we have these set dates, and some of our data partners have said that our data becomes more and more useful the more consistent we are. However, we still have a lot of people that are doing weekly tests. And so maybe you only want to do 2 sites, but you want to do them weekly. That's okay. Or if you want to do them monthly, then we're asking you to do it on these dates. However, as I mentioned, people take these on their holidays, or maybe they have an event with children. So they do sampling in between as well. So long answer short, yes, that's totally fine. What we want is more data, and the more data we have, the better. And when you can start, that's the time that we're going to start collecting. Yeah.
Okay, and so we could, you know, as a community, we could sort of buy initially 1 kit and we could share it as long as we're consistent on the date that we sample in each location. Would that work?
Yeah. So what you want to do is, as a group, just specify what your testing protocol is. Are you starting, are you doing monthly? Are you doing weekly testing? And then just be very clear. Each group has its own protocol, and we keep the data together. And we just want to make sure that anyone contributing to that data set, it's within the protocol that they've set up. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Well, I'll just say I'm so excited about all the new people that are joining us this year. We've got a whole bunch of testers in Saskatchewan with the University of Regina and a local watershed group. You know, these are our first official testers are in Alberta. Lots of new testers in BC and New Brunswick. So I must say, you know, we've done a lot of programs in Ontario, and I'm just very, very excited that we're spreading across the country so that we can contribute to this movement. And the other thing is if you have people that are in some of the bigger cities that want to try this out, WWF are launching, or we're co-launching a lending program. So you can borrow one of the kits that they've purchased from one of their offices for up to 12 days. What it means is, you know, people committing to a more rigorous testing protocol. Instead, they can try it out. So that's a nice thing to do. So thank you all so much for joining me today. As I mentioned, if you have any questions at all, you can email me, or you can participate in our Facebook group. We have a closed Facebook group for testers where we share photos and tips, and there's lots of people that are very experienced that can answer questions as well. So thank you so much, everyone. This stuff.